Jossy, is surprised by either of today's rulings that the FBI can remain involved in the case and that Joran van der Sloot can continue to be questioned?
No, I'm not surprised. I believe it's even that of the FBI is just a decision that had to be made because help was needed by our police, and this is the best help that they can get. But on the other hand, that Joran can be further questioned. Of course, it's within our laws for him to be further questioned.
Now, let me. Your paper has been very involved with finding this witness. In fact, I think that you were the one who found this witness who says that he saw Joran van der Sloot and the Kalpo brothers out much later than they say they were out. Found the guy finally. Where was he?
The gardener?
Yeah.
He said that he saw them between 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning.
No, I know, but where he was missing. He didn't show up in court the other day.
He was, according to police sources that we consulted, he was in Bonaire. Bonaire is another of the 3 islands, Aruba, Curacao, and Bonaire. He was there and he was brought in, I don't know whether it was last night or today, to present himself in court, where a Dutch judge of instruction came over to question him.
What, he forgot about his court appearance?
I don't think so. I think he got cold feet, but then he was reassured by the police, to whom he already gave a sworn statement as to what he saw that early morning. Yeah. And now he was infused with the courage to come and face the defense lawyers. All 3 suspects were there, the Kalpo brothers and Joran. So he was questioned in front of all of them, and the defense lawyers could poke any kind of questions at him that they wanted.
It seems these days, if you don't want to be involved in this case, it's more important to stay away from Jossy's boys than it is from the actual investigators in the case. Jossy, thanks a lot for coming back. We appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
All right. Now joining me with a closer look at everything here, msnbc analyst and former FBI investigator Clint Van Zandt, who has arrived on the island over the weekend. All right, Clint, first let me ask you about this forearm that Jossy's talking about. I mean, this sounds like a really, really long shot that this is somehow involved in this case, don't you think? Okay, Clint, apparently you couldn't hear my question, so let me repeat it. I was asking about this forearm that Jossy Mansur was just talking about, where he says that they have evidence that a forearm washed up in Venezuela. The chances that this is involved in or related to this case pretty slim, right?
Hey, Dan, you know, you look at the things we've been caught up in so far. We've had this, you know, we've had an alleged bloody mattress that didn't work out. We've had an indentation in the sand that didn't work out. We've had a barrel that was found underwater that didn't work out. We've now got a belt that, you know, is still trying to be run down. And this, you know, you know, from an investigative reporter side, from the attorney side, when you got nothing, you go for anything. And I think right now, you got to run it down. If somebody says, look what just washed up, but look at that piece of duct tape, Dan. I mean, that thing hung around for 2 weeks like an albatross around our investigative necks, and it was some surfer. So do you have to run it down? Yeah. Does it look like it's like it's the real thing? You know, I wouldn't bet your farm or mine until we get DNA that says this is a dead bang.
So, Clint, you now have the opportunity to do what I think many commentators would love to do, people with the kind of law enforcement experience that you have, which is actually go there and speak to people. What's the sense you get?
Well, you know, it was interesting. I was going from point A to point B today and talking to a cab driver. And I said, what do they Reuben people feel? And he says, we think she ran away. He said, we think she ran away from her family and that van der Sloot helped her simply escape the island to another place. And I said, well, why wouldn't he just stand up and say, hey, all I did was help the girl get away from a bad family relationship? He says, we don't know, but that's what we believe. I mean, that's kind of denial, Dan.
Yeah, that sounds like a dummy cab driver to me. I mean, I'm not saying we don't know what happened, but the chances that that scenario is what happened seems like a pretty long shot to me. Have you gotten the chance to speak to any of the authorities or the FBI investigating the case?
No. Evidently, there's only one FBI agent left on the island. You know, I got to be honest with you. It's nice that they're going to give the investigation, let the FBI read this. But you know, I've had the opportunity to read one of the statements that Joran gave, and Dan, it would drive you crazy. It's like he said this, he said that. They dutifully wrote it down. They didn't ask any more questions. They didn't try to poke holes in what he said. They took it, they signed their names to it, and walked away. way. I mean, I'm reading the statement and just yelling at it, saying, why didn't you ask the follow-up questions that a reporter or an investigator would ask?
When was that from, Clint? Because we know that he has given numerous statements to the authorities.
Yeah, and this was one of the very, very early on statements.
What does
one
he
of the
say?
multiple statements.
What did they say he said?
And in this particular one, this is the one I think you talked about last night, Dan, where he suggested that one of the Cowpole brothers had sexually assaulted, murdered, and buried her. Mm-hmm. All right? But again, you know, number one, he didn't sign it, which is neither here nor there. 4 police officers signed it. But, you know, the reality is, say, okay, where did this happen? Why did you think that? Where was she buried? Give us the time frame. None of those follow-up questions. They just dutifully took the information, signed it, and went on their way. You know, how many of these have stacked up? We don't even know.
Look out, because Clint Van Zandt is on the island, and he's not going to just take those sorts of answers when he gets to start asking questions, Ryan. Clint, we look forward to checking in with you as you get to talk to more people on the island there.